Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Kim Miller begins now.
Good evening, everyone. Well, Greyhound trainer Anthony Bullock has been banned for life by the Office of Racing Integrity. It's the result of a lengthy inquiry into the controversial racing figure for using an animal part as a lure.
One of Tasmania's top greyhound trainers banished from the sector. The Office of Racing Integrity handing down its decision after an investigation into Anthony Bullock, finding him guilty of possessing an animal part for use as a bait, quarry or lure, and imposing a mandatory penalty of life disqualification.
It's a very important decision and one that we welcome, but it is just one part of a much bigger and complex jigsaw puzzle that we've got a lot of work to do on yet.
I call on Tas Racing now to immediately revoke Mr Bullock's lead trainer award.
In August, animal activists released drone vision of alleged conditions at Mr Bullock's property. Last month, the ORI found it was broadly compliant with animal welfare laws, but said Mr Bullock was still subject to further compliance monitoring and investigation. Political parties questioning how the ORI depended on a third party for evidence to render a verdict.
I think the strongest evidence here is that the Office of Racing Integrity is fundamentally broken, that the Director of Racing should have been stood down a long time ago.
It shows how appallingly inadequate the Office of Racing Integrity is.
The RSPCA refutes the sentiment.
My inspectors have been there on average once a month for the last couple of years. If there was something to find, we would have found it.
Tas Racing CEO Andrew Jenkins says he's noted the finding, saying the focus will now turn to an appropriate level of care for Mr Bullock's greyhounds. Mark Zeta, 7 Tasmania News.
Tasmanians might be paying more than ever for power, but it's still the lowest rate in the nation, according to the state's economic regulator. But concerns remain about supply and a lack of new generation in the pipeline.
With bill shock becoming less and less of a shock and more of an expectation, the Energy Minister says there's an upside.
Tasmania does indeed have the lowest power prices in the nation.
Celebrating a declaration from the state's economic regulator.
We also have the most generous concessions in the nation, and concession holders here in the state are paying the lowest power prices in the nation.
These are the highest electricity bills that Tasmanians have ever paid, and it's because of the government's policies.
The energy debate's heating up, and the government's rolling out an $8 million hydrogen grants program. There's just one problem.
Look, the hydrogen hub is a dream. We don't have enough power for the hydrogen hub.
The last financial year demonstrates that Tasmania actually imported power and imported quite a lot of power.
Caught up in what the state's peak business lobby calls an energy crisis, with little new generation coming online.
We know that state policy is good. We know that state delivery is diabolical. But we have $10 billion worth of our members who are ready with their clean energy developments, who are telling us they are just wondering how they can move these projects forward.
The new Energy Minister charged with solving it. Josh Duggan, 7 Tasmania News.
The public consultation period has been extended on controversial changes to the Tasmania Fire Service. Proposed changes would bring the fire and state emergency services together while also reforming the funding model. Minister Felix Ellis calls it fairer and simpler, but councils and the opposition are labelling an increased fire levy as a tax. Submissions will be accepted for an additional 4 weeks to December 1. Tasmania has survived a wild windstorm which left thousands of residents without power. At its peak, gusts reached 159 kilometres an hour, leaving a trail of damage to show for it.
Picking up side screens and taking down trees, Tasmanians blown away by the severity of last night's windstorm.
I didn't sleep much. I live in Glebe, so that's very windy. Those winds are directly straight onto Glebe, so the house was actually rattling.
It was very windy, lots of things falling out of the trees and things, but we were in our car, so we were all snuggled up and warm.
Tasmania's emergency service not so fortunate, braving the cold in its response to nearly 50 calls for help statewide.
The common theme last night was dislodged roofing iron and dislodged tiles actually. We had a number of trampolines that were airborne, trees onto cars, which we've seen trees onto properties.
They are certainly very impressive gusts. It's not often you approach 100 kilometres per hour recorded at the Ellerslie Road site in Hobart. Top of the mountain was the strongest gust recorded, 159 kilometres per hour.
There were also showers and snowfall as low as 600 metres throughout the day. TasNetwork's still working to reverse the impact, with 7,000 customers losing power. Residents in the Huon Valley and on the Tasman Peninsula hit the hardest.
If you think about the wind we had last night, followed up by the rain that we had on Saturday night, the ground is fairly soft. That's a perfect mix for trees coming over and taking our lines out. Its crews are hoping to have everyone back online by the end of the day. Brianna Boylan, 7 Tasmania News.
The state government is attempting to reduce red tape by publishing timeframes for the processing of permits and approvals for small businesses. The measure will be introduced next March
There's
in a bid to grow the sector.
Percentage of my time, particularly at the moment, that I do administration applications with external authorities.
If your application or your contact with government isn't done within a certain time frame, it has to be, or there's some kind of recompense to do with that.
Small Business Minister Nick Duigan says businesses are telling him processing times are taking too long.
We'll be across government going to our agencies and asking them to provide us with timeframes of what they see as acceptable levels.
State government data shows there are more than 41,000 small businesses in Tasmania. The Greens will move to decriminalise begging when Parliament returns next week. It was made a criminal offence in Tasmania nearly 100 years ago during the Great Depression. The minor party says the laws are outdated and unfair and has long opposed them.
It'll be such a good thing to do for Tasmanians who are impoverished and living in hard circumstances.
The government introduced a similar bill in 2020, but after amendments were made in the Legislative Council, it's not returned to the House of Assembly for a vote. Well, it's been a hairy 24 hours or so for Hobart Show organisers setting up in wild weather, but the regatta grounds are ready to come alive for 2023. Today, judges were busy casting their eyes over some of Tasmania's creative talents ahead of gates opening tomorrow.
Turning the vision of one into something everyone can see. Elizabeth Hunn putting into picture a dream that renowned biologist Lisa Gershwin had about jellyfish.
When I saw Lisa sitting there, all her hair, it was like jellyfish tentacles. It's so crazy long and curly. I thought, there's a painting.
The portrait crowned the Royal Hobart's overall Best in Show. From picture-perfect art to tasty treats, judges have spent the past few days testing their taste buds.
That thread of creativity and technical excellence is really high here, and as high as it's, and probably higher than it's ever been.
Those working at Regatta Point not as comfortable. Dozens braving the weather to put the final touches to Sideshow Alley.
There's nothing like the show. There's nothing that brings the bush to the city like the Royal Hobart Show.
Those from the bush settling in. Farm animals getting comfortable with their home for the next 3 days. This bull, a feature performer, travelling with the famous Stockman's Outback Show.
And those animals are very highly trained. They probably don't look like it at the moment in the paddock, but that is a great show.
Gates open tomorrow morning, with thousands of people expected to spend their public holiday here. Times, interests and fashions have changed, but organisers say the appeal of the time-honoured festival remains strong.
Program non-stop entertainment from go to woe. It's all free, so if you want a good day out, you can occupy the kids all day long.
John Hunt, 7 Tasmania News.
Youth advocates are warning Tasmania needs better career education to build a skilled workforce. The Beacon Foundation submission to the state government's youth job strategy calls for more effort to engage students before they reach college. They also want a task force established to drive better outcomes for young people.
An independent task force that really looks at not only the development of this initiative, this job strategy, but also the implementation of that.
Limited career awareness and lack of work experience opportunities really makes it difficult for young people to get a sense of what's available in Tasmania.
The foundation believes the concept of being job ready needs to be properly defined. The next generation of problem solvers has taken to the Hobart Council chambers, debating how to make the region safer and more environmentally sustainable. The program giving a voice to those who may one day help lead our state.
Homelessness, reliable transport and pollution,
all top of mind at this special council meeting.
My idea is to turn all the street lights off at 10 p.m. to prevent light pollution.
20 students putting their heads together, hoping to solve the big issues facing Tasmanians.
Public transport in Hobart needs to be improved. One way we could do this is to put GPS trackers on metro buses.
Winners Olive and Bella from Princes Street Primary and St Mary's College leading the town hall session, taking home this year's top awards for the Hobart Children's Mayor program.
My idea is to have a tram route running from the Rest Point Casino into Sandy Bay, and it would ensure that school kids have a safe and easy way to get to school.
Earth-friendly suggestions, some of the most discussed.
We always hear a lot about environmental concerns from our children's mayors and people involved in it.
All students will receive a letter from Hobart City Council sharing some feedback on their suggestions and ideas, including if it's something that's already on Council's agenda. Inspiring the next generation of leaders this Children's Week.
It's really important because they get to experience what older people do. Make sure that we can be doing everything we can for climate change and hopefully conquer it.
Ruby Cairns, 7 Tasmania News.
After a win and a draw, the Tigers are ready to defend their early position atop the Sheffield Shield standings, hosting Brisbane at Blunsdon Arena tomorrow, if the weather allows for cricket. Cold, blustery conditions, though, might work in the Tigers' favour.
Our two big quicks in Laurie Neil-Smith and Gabe Bell are doing their role with the new ball, and then the skipper's got plenty of options that he can turn to throughout a day's play.
The squad remains unchanged from last week's test at the Wacker. The coach hopeful his bowlers can dispense the Bulls' heavy hitters like Matt Renshaw.
Queensland, they're used to those hot, steamy conditions early in the season, so to get them out of their comfort zone with weather is a nice change, and hopefully with some friendly bowling conditions out there as well will pose a nice challenge to them.
Queensland are coming off a win, beating Victoria by an innings. Hurricanes captain Elise Villani is expected to be back on deck tonight for the Hurricanes' WBBL rematch with the Scorchers. Her experience at the crease was missed last week as the Canes failed to come close to Perth's target at UTAS Stadium. Their shot of revenge gets underway at the Wacker in around half an hour. Faced with a weekend double-header, the Jack Jumpers aren't thinking any further ahead than Friday's home clash with Melbourne, nor are they allowing themselves to be troubled by the threat of sliding down the congested NBL ladder. Facing a massive weekend of basketball, it's business as usual for the Jackies.
Melbourne United's coming to town, you better be ready.
First against second, Friday night at the Ant Nest is going to be a blockbuster. The only side to get the better of United so far this season is the Jack Jumpers.
It's going to be a battle against whose will win and whose style of play will win. I think they're similar to us, physical, and it'd be a great game to watch.
One X-factor absent from Melbourne's ranks last time, though, was Joe Luala-Chul.
Marcus Lee's in our team for a reason, and we feel that it'd be a really good matchup for him and a great test.
The Jackies will run out sporting their Indigenous jersey designed by local artist Reuben Doyle.
It's a great opportunity to represent our cultural side of Tasmania. I just wanted to incorporate that whole defend the island. Obviously put our Indigenous culture in there with the shell middens and 9 nations on the back.
Friday's challenge is the priority, never mind the flight north the following morning.
To be honest, we haven't even talked about Brisbane, and that's just, I think every club's in that mode when you have a one-day turnaround, and we're just focused on Melbourne and our home game, and Brisbane will deal with that when we jump on the plane.
Fortune has smiled on the Jack Jumpers so far, and there's a major factor at play.
Keeping everyone healthy, I think that's the biggest thing. I think as long as we stay healthy, we're going to be in every game and execute, and we give ourselves a chance to win.
I don't want to put the mockers on them, Kim, but I think they can win them both this weekend.
Yep. One game at a time. Thank you very much there, Nick.
Good evening. Well, Mother Nature was in full force with severe wind gusts overnight and this morning of up to 159 kilometres an hour recorded at Coonunny, Mount Wellington. Snowfalls were also observed about elevated parts of the state. Today, Hobart just 11 degrees, Launceston 14, Devonport 15, 13 in Burnie. 17 the state's top at St Helens, Friendly Beaches, 16 Low Head 15, Flinders Island 14, 13 for King Island, Marai Island and Bushy Park, Grove and Strawn both 11, Luncheon Hill 9, Liaweenie nowhere near double digits with just 4 degrees. Today we saw widespread low-level cloud over Tasmania following a passage of a trough. A band of mid to high-level cloud with embedded thunderstorms stretches through central Australia and into New South Wales, associated with a surface trough. Tomorrow, a high-pressure system sits to the south of SA. A trough of low pressure extends from WA through the NT into Queensland and New South Wales. Southwesterly winds 20 to 30 knots, reaching up to 40 knots in the southeast. South to southwesterly winds increasing to 30 knots in the southeast. West to southwesterly winds in the west and south with huge swells remaining at 5 to 7 metres. A gale warning has been issued for the lower east coast, southeast coast and the southwest coast tomorrow. That strong wind warning continues for most coastal and inland waters. There's a minor flood warning that's been issued also for the Huon River, a warning to sheep graziers in the northwest, Midlands, East Coast, Upper Derwent Valley and southeast forecast districts. A bushwalkers weather alert remains for the western and central plateau due to hazardous conditions as snow lowers to 700 metres. Forecast for the Royal Hobart Show tomorrow. 14 for Hobart, similar conditions in Cygnet 13, cloudy and 14 for New Norfolk. Launceston partly cloudy 16 and mostly sunny in Devonport, much the same in Campbelltown, 14's the top. Burnie mostly sunny 14, easing showers for Strawn 13, windy in Smithton with 15. St Helens partly cloudy 17, cloudy also in Swansea 15, cloud partially hanging around in Cressy 14 degrees. Forecast for Friday mostly fine with patchy morning inland frost. Saturday showers developing about the west during the afternoon and evening with gusty northwesterly winds. Sunday showers likely to clear during the afternoon. Taking a look now to the mainland tomorrow, much warmer in Darwin, 35 and partly cloudy, becoming windy in Sydney 19, showers easing in Melbourne 14 degrees. Currently in Hobart, it's partly cloudy 7, partly cloudy also in Launceston 10, mostly sunny in Devonport. Now, Kim, I'm sure it comes as no surprise to fellow Tasmanians with the soggy conditions for tomorrow that are forecast for the Royal Hobart Show.
And that is all your news for now. Thanks for joining us. Good night, everyone.